there's something I need to tell you." The moment my wife said those words, I knew something was wrong. Not because of what she said, because of how she said it. Emily couldn't look at me. Her hands were shaking, and there were tears in her eyes. For nearly a minute, she just sat there staring at the kitchen table. I remember glancing at the clock on the wall. 7:43 p.m. I know that sounds like a strange detail to remember, but when your life falls apart, your mind clings to the smallest things. And trust me, my life was about to fall apart. But before we start today's story, please subscribe to the channel and like this video. My name is Daniel Carter, and I'm 34 years old. Until that night, I thought I had a good life. Not a perfect life, just a good one. I had a stable job, a nice home, and a wife I loved more than anything. Emily and I had been married for 11 years. We met in college, became friends, then best friends, then eventually fell in love. She was the kind of person everyone trusted. The kind of person who remembered birthdays, who checked on people when they were struggling, who stayed behind after family gatherings to help clean up. That's why what happened next made absolutely no sense. Emily, she finally looked up and immediately started crying. My stomach tightened. "What is it?" She swallowed hard, then whispered, "I'm pregnant." For a second, I just stared at her. Then I smiled. We'd spent years trying for a baby. Years. Doctor appointments, tests, disappointments, false hope, heartbreak. And now finally, maybe it was happening. But my smile disappeared almost immediately, because Emily wasn't smiling. She looked terrified. The fear in my chest returned. "Emily?" She covered her mouth, then said 5 words that shattered my world. "The baby isn't yours." Everything stopped. I honestly don't remember breathing. I don't remember blinking. I don't even remember thinking. I just stared at her, certain I'd heard her wrong. What? Her shoulders shook. "The baby isn't yours." The room felt silent, too silent, like the entire world had suddenly gone still. I laughed, not because anything was funny, because my brain refused to accept reality. "No." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I'm sorry, Daniel." "No." I pushed my chair back. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. "Who is he?" Emily closed her eyes. "Please, who is he?" She flinched. For a second, I felt guilty. Then I remembered what she'd just told me. "Tell me his name." "I can't." "You can't?" More tears, more silence, more excuses. Not one answer, just one devastating confession. And suddenly the woman I'd trusted most felt like a complete stranger. I grabbed my keys. Emily stood up immediately. "Please don't leave." I looked at her. The woman I thought I knew. The woman I'd planned to spend the rest of my life with. And all I could see was betrayal. Without another word, I walked out. I drove for hours. No destination, no plan. Just empty roads and a head full of questions. Around midnight, I found myself parked outside my father's house. Richard Carter, the man who raised me after my mother died. The man I trusted more than anyone. The porch light was still on. When he opened the door, he immediately knew something was wrong. "Daniel?" I stepped inside. Emily cheated on me. The color drained from his face. "What?" "She's pregnant." His reaction surprised me. Not because he looked shocked, because he looked scared. Genuinely scared. And that didn't make sense. I spent the next hour explaining everything. When I finished, Dad looked exhausted, like a man carrying a burden too heavy to bear. Finally, he said something strange. "Did she tell you who the father is?" I frowned. No. His expression somehow became even worse. That bothered me. "Dad?" He looked away. "What? Why do you keep asking that?" "Just curious." It was an obvious lie, and we both knew it. For the first time in my life, it felt like my father was hiding something from me. The next few days were torture. Emily called constantly. I ignored her. She texted. I ignored that too. Then the letters started. Handwritten letters. Every single one saying the same thing. "Please let me explain. There's more to the story. You're in danger." That last part bothered me. You're in danger. Danger from who? Danger from what? Nothing made sense. Then 4 days later, my younger sister Sarah called. She sounded panicked. "Daniel, where are you?" "Work. You need to get to Dad's house right now." My stomach dropped. "What happened?" He collapsed. 20 minutes later, I was sitting beside my father's hospital bed. The doctors said it wasn't fatal, but it was serious. Late that night, Sarah went home. For the first time all day, Dad and I were alone. The room was quiet, the machines beeped softly. Then Dad spoke. "Close the door." Something about his tone made my stomach tighten. I closed it. When I turned back, tears were running down his face. I froze. My father never cried. Not when Mom died. Not when he lost everything during the recession. Never. But now he was crying. "Dad?" His voice shook. "There's something I've needed to tell you for 34 years. Every hair on my arm stood up. "What are you talking about?" He reached into the drawer beside his bed and pulled out a thick yellow envelope. It looked old, very old. My name was written across the front, in my mother's handwriting. Suddenly, I didn't want to open it. Something deep inside me was screaming not to, because somehow I knew. Whatever was inside that envelope was about to change my life forever. "Open it," Dad whispered. Slowly, I opened the envelope. Inside were photographs, legal documents, and a birth certificate. My birth certificate. I looked down, then froze. The room seemed to spin around me. The name listed under father wasn't Richard Carter. It was someone else, someone I'd never heard of before. My hands started shaking. "Dad," tears rolled down his face. Then he said the words that shattered the last piece of my world. "Richard Carter isn't the man listed on your birth certificate." I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I couldn't move. But before I could ask a single question, Dad revealed something even worse. Something that instantly connected to Emily's confession. Something that made my blood run cold. "The man listed on that certificate," Dad's voice broke, "is the same man your wife has been meeting in secret." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "The man listed on that certificate is the same man your wife has been meeting in secret." I stared at my father. My heart was pounding so hard it felt painful. "What does that mean?" Dad looked away, like he couldn't bear to look me in the eyes. "The man's name is Michael Hayes." I looked back down at the birth certificate. There it was, Michael Hayes. A name I'd never heard before. Yet somehow that stranger had just become the center of everything. My marriage, my family, my entire life. "Who is he?" Dad didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached for a glass of water. His hands were shaking. And for the first time in my life, Richard Carter looked afraid. Finally, he spoke. "He's the reason your mother spent half her life looking over her shoulder." A chill ran through me. "What are you talking about?" Dad took a long breath. Then he told me a story I'd never heard before. 35 years earlier, before I was born, my mother had briefly dated Michael Hayes. At first, he seemed charming, successful, confident, the kind of man everyone liked. But behind closed doors, he was different, controlling, manipulative, obsessive. When my mother tried to leave him, he refused to accept it. He followed her, called constantly, showed up uninvited. Eventually, she cut all contact. Few months later, she met my father, Richard Carter. They fell in love. And shortly after that, my mother became pregnant. With me. I frowned. "Dad, if that's true, why is Michael's name on my birth certificate?" The room went silent. Dad closed his eyes. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Because Michael made sure it was." I felt sick. "What?" "He had connections." Dad swallowed hard. "He knew people in the county office back then." I stared at him. "That's impossible." "I wish it was." Then Dad revealed the truth. When my mother became pregnant, Michael somehow found out, and he became obsessed, not with her, with me. He saw me as proof that she had chosen another man over him, and because he couldn't have her, he decided to control the next best thing, her child, me. For years, my parents fought him legally. Privately, desperately, but every time they thought he was gone, he'd reappear. Then one day he vanished completely, or so they thought. I sat there stunned, trying to process decades of secrets all at once. Then another question hit me. What does any of this have to do with Emily? Dad's face darkened. Because he came back. My stomach dropped. What? 3 months ago, everything suddenly felt colder. He contacted Emily. I clenched my jaw. Why? Dad looked directly at me. Because he was dying. I froze. What? He has terminal cancer. The room fell silent. Dad continued. When he learned he didn't have much time left, he became obsessed with finding you. For several seconds, I couldn't speak. Then I remembered Emily's confession, the pregnancy, the lies, the secret meetings. None of it made sense. I stood up. I need to talk to Emily. Dad nodded. There's something else. I stopped. What? His eyes filled with regret. The reason Emily never told you who she was meeting, his voice cracked, is because I asked her not to. I stared at him. What? I made her promise. The words hit to me like a truck. My father had known the entire time. I left the hospital feeling like my head might explode. 20 minutes later, I walked through my front door. Emily was sitting exactly where she'd been the night everything fell apart. The kitchen table, the same chair, the same broken expression. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she quietly said, "He told you." I nodded. "Start talking." Tears immediately filled her eyes. And for the first time since all of this began, she finally told me everything. 3 months earlier, my father had contacted her privately. Michael Hayes had reached out, not to me, to him. Michael claimed he was dying. And before he died, he wanted one thing. To tell me the truth. Ted refused. He didn't trust him, but Michael wouldn't stop. Letters, phone calls, messages. Eventually, he tracked down Emily. At first, she ignored him. Then he sent something that changed everything. A box. Inside were hundreds of old letters. Letters my mother had written decades earlier. Letters nobody knew existed. My stomach tightened. What was in them? Emily's voice trembled. The truth. The letters revealed everything. Michael's obsession, the harassment, the manipulation. The years of fear my parents had hidden from me. But there was something else. One final letter. written by my mother shortly before she died, addressed to me. I stared at her. What? Emily slowly reached into a drawer, then handed me an envelope. My hands immediately started shaking, because I recognized the handwriting, my mother's. I sat down, opened the envelope, and began reading. By the second paragraph, tears filled my eyes. By the third, I could barely see. The letter wasn't about Michael. It wasn't about secrets. It wasn't about fear. It was about my father, the man who raised me, the man sitting in a hospital bed believing I'd hate him. My mother wrote about his sacrifices, his kindness, the nights he stayed awake taking care of me, the jobs he worked to provide for us, the dreams he gave up so I could have opportunities he never had. Then came the final paragraph, the one that broke me. If you ever learn the truth, remember this. Being a father has nothing to do with a name on a document. Richard Carter chose you every single day of his life. That's what makes him your father. I couldn't stop crying, neither could Emily. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then I looked up, the baby. Emily closed her eyes, and finally answered the question that had destroyed our marriage. The baby is yours. I stared at her. What? The baby has always been yours. The room went silent. I don't understand. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I lied. Those two words hurt. But this time I forced myself to listen, really listen. Emily explained that when Michael started contacting her, he became fixated on one thing, getting close to me. When she refused, he started threatening my father, threatening to release false stories, forged documents, anything he could use to destroy our family. Emily panicked. The pressure became unbearable. Then, on the same day she discovered she was pregnant, Michael sent another threat, one that convinced her she was putting everyone she loved in danger. She broke, and instead of telling me the truth, she pushed me away. The fastest way she could think of, by making me hate her. I sat there speechless. Every assumption I'd made had been wrong. Every accusation, every conclusion, wrong. Months later, Michael Hayes finally agreed to meet, not with lawyers, not with investigators, with me, alone. I expected anger, bitterness, manipulation. Instead, I found an old man sitting in his wheelchair, a dying man, a broken man. And for the first time, I realized something. Michael Hayes had spent his entire life trying to possess things that could never belong to him. My mother, my family, my identity, and in the process, he destroyed himself. Our conversation lasted less than an hour. When it ended, he handed me a photograph of my mother from when she was young. Then he quietly said, I spent 30 years blaming everyone else for my mistakes. A week later, he passed away, and with him, the final shadow hanging over my family disappeared. A few months after that, my son was born. The first person to hold him wasn't me. It was Richard Carter, my father, the real one. Not because of blood, not because of DNA. Because he earned that title every day of his life. As I watched him hold his grandson, I thought about everything that had happened. The lies, the fear, the secrets, the misunderstandings. And I realized something important. The greatest damage in my life hadn't been caused by hatred. It had been caused by silence, by people carrying burdens alone, by people trying to protect each other instead of trusting each other. If Emily had trusted me sooner, if my parents had told me the truth years earlier, if fear hadn't controlled so many decisions, so much pain could have been avoided. And that's the lesson I want to leave you with. The truth can hurt, sometimes badly. But hidden truths usually hurt far more, because secrets don't disappear with time. They grow, until one day they're too heavy to carry. And when that day comes, the people you love end up carrying the weight with you.